Hey everybody, it's your Peacekeeper coming at you with the next video in our How to Play series on the US Battleship line redo. This is the Tier 8 North Carolina class of battleships. There were two ships in this class, the North Carolina and the Washington, laid down in 1937 and 1938 respectively. This is also the first US Fast Battleship design for World War II. The original design was slated to have 12 14-inch 50 cal guns in 3 quad turrets, but was switched to the 9 by 16-inch gun configuration we see today due to the US invoking the Escalator Clause of the Washington Naval Treaty. The ship was designed to be fast, but it did not give up armor to get that speed. However, the original plan was actually for a 30-knot design, and that was later dropped down to 27 knots after much deliberation by the powers that be. The ship was still a massive compromise to fit those 16-inch guns and all of the other requirements, including that 27-knot speed, under the Washington Naval Treaty's limit of 35,000 tons. People confuse the term fast battleship with battlecruiser. In fact, there's a number of people out there that will actually use these terms interchangeably. I have to point out that there is a distinct difference between a fast battleship and a battle cruiser, and it has to do mostly with the execution of the armor profiles and how that armor is used and thicknesses. But the North Carolinas and the US Fast Battleship line, none of them are battle cruisers. The North Carolina class is also frequently stated as being designed only to withstand 14-inch shells, which is at most a half-truth. Sure, the original design was against 14-inch shells that it was going to be firing. However, by the time the final design came out, and by the time the ships were laid down, they did still have a significant immunity zone to the 16-inch Mark V AP shell. The Mark V AP shell, of course, being the lighter of the two 16-inch shells that we see in-game, fired by the Colorado class. That immunity zone shrank from 20,000 to 33,000 yards with the 14-inch shells, down to 21,000 yards to 27,000 yards with the Mark V AP shell, and was basically eliminated by the time that the Mark 8 Super Heavy 16-inch shell came around. While the layout on the North Carolina has thinner armor plating than the preceding Colorado class, the protection remained identical due to more efficient use of that armor by angling and by locating it over more critical components. Both the Colorado and the North Carolina have an all-or-nothing armor scheme. It's just that the North Carolina's updated ship design allowed them to better use those armor platings where they belong. The North Carolinas also features an extensive and effective, although not necessarily so in-game, torpedo damage system, which, like I said, isn't really all that well observed in-game. In terms of service history, the North Carolina can still be today, and she has her own great history, but the ship that saw the most interesting naval combat has to be the USS Washington. The USS Washington participated in the Second Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, in which she and South Dakota famously went against the Congo-class battleship Kirishima and the Takao-class cruisers Otago and Takao, and of course their escorting destroyers. During the battle, South Dakota would receive 27 shell hits as she erroneously sailed within 5,000 yards of the fleet at night, the Japanese fleet at night, and was lit up by spotlights. The distraction and focus of the Japanese fleet on South Dakota allowed the USS Washington to sail within 8,400 yards of Kirishima, which is point-blank range. Kirishima would receive no less than 9 16-inch shell hits and over 45-inch gun hits, and set her ablaze, and then later she would capsize. And I say no less than 9 16-inch shell hits because that is the most commonly accepted number. However, I've seen reports with way more shell hits than that, especially at that closer range. During the battle, the USS Washington would fire 117 16-inch shells and 522 5-inch shells at the Japanese fleet. And pretty much all of those ships would go to the bottom, leaving South Dakota and Washington the sole survivors. In-game, This is the first U.S. battleship that has real speed to it, and I can't emphasize this enough. You've gone through tiers 3 through 7 only having 21 knots or thereabouts. This ship has 28.9 knots with the speed flag, or rough 27-ish without that flag. And this is the first time people are going to find themselves in a U.S. battleship easily overextending themselves, meaning you get quickly into a combat and then realize, oh crap, I'm surrounded, and then have to find a way to get out of that. I have to stress this. You need to use that speed wisely, and you need to bring the skills that you've learned from Tier 3 to Tier 7 with your battle awareness to keep yourself from getting overextended and too far into the enemy lines. That speed also offers greater flexibility in your ability to move about the map, certainly more than the previous tiers did, and this ship requires a lot less pre-planning. However, you will definitely benefit from all of that additional pre-planning. The downside to all of this is that the way Wargaming has chosen to represent her armor scheme means that she is extremely soft when broadside, but extremely tanky when head-on, except, of course, the Yamato, which, just law pens you through the nose. She also has a massive anti-aircraft suite, and even her final hull does not represent just how many guns the ship had for anti-aircraft duty. However, she doesn't really need any more anti-aircraft guns. She already melts Tier 8 aircraft. She already holds her own against Tier 9 and Tier 10 aircraft. So with that, your ship finally becomes nearly untouchable to aircraft, and if you throw in a full anti-aircraft build with her, it just gets worse for aircraft, which is just a fantastic feeling. The guns, this is probably the coolest part of the U.S. Fast Battleship lines, is all the guns can maintain tracking, can stay on target, while the ship is aggressively maneuvering. That is definitely in contrast to the previous standards and the pre-standards, which you almost had to turn the ship to point the guns because the turret rotation was so slow. Speaking of their maneuverability, they are also extremely maneuverable, and their maneuverabilities are actually nerfed slightly in-game, which is actually quite annoying, but it's done for balance reasons. That maneuverability makes her just an absolutely capable ship, and with the stealth build, you can do some fun things with this ship that other battleships can't do, but we'll cover that in just a minute. And in terms of her outright gunnery, those 16-inch guns hit like a freight train, and are really quite accurate as well. And that has definitely been a change since the last time I played her. I mean, I've been playing her through all of her changes over the years since open beta, well, since closed beta, but her gunnery has actually improved quite noticeably, and this ship is just a lot of fun to play. In fact, while the Bismarck is superior in a lot of ways, the North Carolina certainly can hold her own in spite of what the stats show. Speaking of those stats, let's go ahead and dive on into them. In terms of hit points, she has 66,000 hit points. You can see she has up to 305 millimeters of armor in her belt. Her torpedo damage reduction is 21%, which is, that number is way lower than it actually should be. I can't remember if it was North Carolina or Washington. I believe it was North Carolina actually took a sub-launch torpedo up here near the number 1 turret. They initially slowed down to assess the damage, but after realizing that there was no appreciable damage aside from the hole in the side of the ship, no flooding or anything on the inside, they were able to maintain 25 knots as they steamed back home. Wow. You wouldn't find that in any other battleship, aside from maybe the U.S. standards and some of the older ships like the Queen Elizabeths and stuff like that. Maybe the Yamatos. I just don't... you don't hear of that happening anywhere else. So why Wargaming has chosen 21% based on their arbitrary formula, that to me seems really low, but balance, right? Her main battery consists of the 9 16-inch 45 caliber Mark 6 guns. They are in 3 triple turrets, 2 fore, 1 aft. They have a main battery firing range of 23.3 kilometers. The secondary armament, there are 20 and 10 of the dual mount 5-inch 38 cal guns. that serve as both your secondaries and your anti-aircraft suite. Your secondary range in a non-secondary build is 6.3 kilometers. So if you're in an anti-aircraft build with basic firing training, advanced firing training, that will get you out to 6.3 kilometers. In terms of anti-aircraft defense, she has 44 20mm Oerlikon guns. She has 15 of the quad 40mm Bofors. And, of course, those 25-inch 38 cal guns in the 10 dual-purpose mounts. In terms of maneuverability, her max speed is 28.9 knots. That's with the speed flag. And her turning circle is 760 meters. Her rudder shift time is 13.8 seconds, which is relatively quick. Her concealment range, and this is without Concealment Expert on the Captain, but with the Concealment Systems Mod 1, is 13.7 kilometers by sea and 11.3 kilometers by air. Those modules, let's dive on into those. Main Armaments Mod 1. AA Guns Mod 2 for the increase in the gunnery range. There's not really a whole lot else on here that I would really consider viable. There are some people who do feel that the secondary battery mod 2 is an interesting and different build. Personally, I'm not a big fan of getting that close with these ships, but if that works for you, by all means run it. Damage Control Systems Mod 1, a staple of US battleships. Steering Gears Mod 2, also a staple of US battleships. And Concealment Systems Mod 1. This is the first ship in the US battleship line that gets this Tier 8 plus slot. And you have Target Acquisition Systems Mod 1 as your only other choice. Target Acquisition Systems Mod 1 does have its uses. It does increase the range at which you can spot ships. It does also increase the range at which you can, quote, naturally detect other ships from, I think it's 2.5 to 3.5 kilometers, or thereabouts. It also increases the acquisition range of torpedoes by 20%, which is basically a Vigilance Light. That is certainly a viable build for those who wish to use that. I've chosen the concealment build. I don't find myself sitting bow on too frequently with these ships. I mean, I do, but for the most part, I find myself wiggling back and forth. And we'll see that in the battle video. Let's roll the battle video. Alright, so as I said in that first part of this video, it's very easy to get yourself overextended in this ship because the increase in speed over the standards that you played before the ship. And with that comes an added level of attention that has to be paid to what's going on around you. As you can see, this is a Tier 8 fight. We are the top tier battleship, and in my opinion, probably the best battleship in the game, although I'm sure that's going to draw a fair number of criticisms from other people. You can also see I'm rocking the really awesome Gamescom camo. This battle comes out to be right around about 150,000-ish damage, give or take. I know it's over 150,000. I guess we should go with that. And of course, this is Neighbors, one of my favorite maps. And if you haven't seen some of my other videos where I play Neighbors, my area of favoritism is definitely Cap C, simply because there's enough cover there that if I need to get out of there, I can. And that's one of the things that the Fast Battleship line you really have to focus on. You've got a lot of speed to get into these fights and engagements, so once you're there, you need to have a backup plan for how to get the heck back and out from that combat. Because at some point, you're either going to have to turn, or your team is going to have to push past you in order for you to make that turn to go elsewhere, or to continue the fight. And if you do turn broadside and you happen to get caught by enemy battleships, expect large portions of your health to just disappear. And that is one of the problems with the Tier 8, 9, and 10 US battleships, is that while they are very capable ships, the problem comes when you try and turn. And that's part of the reason why I like the concealment build over this bow-on tanky build with different skill sets. I just much prefer the play style of a little bit more agile ship where I can actually turn without fear of dying instantly, which requires that concealment build. You can see here the gun angles to get all 9 barrels to bear. It is quite usable in this configuration, and you don't have to sit broadside with it. You're going to find people are going to do that. Why is beyond me. I don't know. These ships are very soft to incoming fire when they aren't angled, but they are nearly impenetrable by anything resembling armor piercing when they are bow on. You also need to give a fair amount of respect to the German cruisers as well. If you're broadside to a German cruiser, definitely expect to take lots of damage in a US Fast Battleship, and that's because the superstructure of an all-or-nothing scheme battleship is very thin. And the downside to that is you will take a lot of damage from anything shooting AP at your superstructure. Not when you're bow on, because you've got that huge conning tower there to go ahead and take the brunt of that. So we started off this engagement shooting at a Bayern, and dispersion has shafted us, even though, those shots lined up really, really well, and they lined up nice and tight. They, of course, did not hit. And you can see we've already disappeared from detection again. We get detected only because this hipper pops out. And the hipper has a turtleback armor scheme. If you guys didn't know that, it does have a turtleback armor scheme. There's a pretty good shot grouping, and 10K, one salvo. So one of the things that the U.S. battleships are really quite capable of doing is killing cruisers. In fact, the U.S. battleship line, a lot of people call them cruiser killers, which is a bit of a misnomer. It really drastically underplays how capable these ships are against other battleships. The hipper is just a tough nut to crack, but as you can see, it does take damage, and in that case, it takes a lot of damage, 20,000 damage. It's not immune. But what makes the U.S. battleship so good is the fact that Mark 8 Super Heavy shell has a lot of straight pen value. And so if you hit with it and it doesn't bounce, it's going to do a lot of damage to those ships. And we're kind of fishing around here for broadside targets that are within a relatively close range. That Dunkirk is hiding behind an island, which is probably a wise place for him, especially since I'm spotted by aircraft. We do have an Amagi. You can see that the vast majority of the damage he did, the 4K that he did not do any... I mean, that's not a significant amount of damage by any stretch of the imagination. And there you can see the horizontal dispersion working against us. Still took 10K off of that Amagi. Had I aimed probably just a tick lower, that probably would have been 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 or 5 Citadel hits. We are going to go ahead and we're going to turn ourselves ever so slightly so as we are not sitting broadside to other battleships, but with a little bit of field craft, you'll notice that I'm sitting just far enough outside the gunnery range of all their battleships, so not a huge risk there to me. Aimed a little bit too high, but we still took 4K off of that Miyoko. And we do have a rear turret that we can engage. My thought process on going on the north side of this was basically, well, that Amagi's up here. I need to stop him from getting around the back sides of the map. Of course, we do not want to forget that there are ships in the south that are pushing that southern cap point. We also have a battleship and a destroyer just hanging out on the 1-2 line in the DE area. It's just weird. So, overslowed Amagi. Yep, don't mind me going to go ahead and shoot at your broadside. And we'll only get 7K off of that. And you'll notice I'm continuing to angle. I am moving away in this angle from the Amagi. Nothing but bounces, baby. Not going to get any argument out of me on that one. So now he's going to start backing up and play World of Tanks. Really what he should have done is he should have gone and just kept going forward and turned out and away. He would have been through this turn. He wouldn't have to worry about all the fire he's receiving. He wouldn't have to worry about the 12,000 damage that I just did to him because he would be well on his way away from here. And we're going to take this island here off to our left side, and we're going to kind of hook around it, but not until we fire off this last salvo. My goal is to do as much damage to him before he disappears behind that island. In fact, what I'm hoping for is a good Citadel hit. But you can see the gun accuracy. That shot's not a good example, but you do get a number of them that just cluster up super tight. That one we had 3 bounces on. one overpen and one normal pen for only 1,300 damage? That seems awfully weird to me, but again, as Wargaming has said, you know, apparently this is due to whatever reason. I don't know. So rather than hook behind this island, we're going to go ahead and we are going to turn to the right. This opens us up to that Amagi. However, the one thing that it does do, and you'll see, is that stealth build, that mild stealth build that I've got going because I don't have Concealment Expert yet, has made me invisible to him. So he can't even see me, and we're really not that far away from him. Only 15 kilometers, which for a battleship, you know, the U.S. battleships are very stealthy battleships for what they are. And, you know, I can't complain. The fast battleships do have a specific play style. It is a little bit more nose-on than some people really want to play. And that's fine. If you want to play broadside battleships and the you know, perpetual Battle of Jutland, go play a U.S. Standard or go play a German battleship, which truthfully would be far better at it than the U.S. battleships would be. The North Carolina, though, is far more flexible than that. And at this point, you can see we are full up on our full flank speed here. We are trying our damnedest to get back into this fight. We do have a Cleveland that is opening up broadside there, and you can see that the gun arcs do give us some favorable arcage. However, we miss. Just barely miss him. Shot over him. That is one other thing that people also don't like about the North Carolina is the shells feel real floaty and lofty compared to the Colorado, and there's an element of truth to that. You're firing a 2,700-pound projectile instead of a 2,250-pound projectile, and you're going to get a little bit more lofty shell flight time. There you can see I'm attempting to find a target here that provides favorable, you know, shot placement. That Amagi is still moving backwards, but we've got a Miyoko here that I'd like to see removed from the game. One bounce. Must not have been leading him just quite right. It was kind of a snapshot there coming around the island. And you can see we're up to 63,822 damage. We are still moving full flank towards B, which is where we need to go. If I was in a U.S. battleship and I was this far off the map, I would still be on the north side of this cap point. We really wouldn't be doing a whole lot of anything effectively. And Cleveland, Miyoko are still interested in trying to burn me to the ground. That's alright. Maybe we can, you know, remove Miyoko's pains from him. I was hoping he would turn away from this, but he ends up not, and we end up overshooting him. That's my bad. Really, with the angle that he was going at, I probably should have gone and focused a little bit differently. That Cleveland's now dead, and now we have a Dunkirk coming around the island here. Now, this Hatsuharu, unfortunately, is going to bear the brunt of the bad news from this Dunkirk, because my guns still aren't up, and I wasn't able to take advantage of the Dunkirk as he was coming out and around. We did get a salvo off on him. 3 overpens and a normal pen. For it looks like 9k damage, thereabouts. And, well, now he's in smoke and I'm spotted, so this sucks. There's no other appropriate way to say that other than this sucks. Aha! He pops out, silly Frenchman, and he pops out broadside, or nearly broadside. Does he not realize how bad of an idea that is? And to shoot HE at me. Alright. Well, there's 3 normal pens for, you know, 6k damage. I apparently couldn't remember how to shoot at the beginning of this match. It does take a little bit of transition. If you're used to playing like the Iowa, Missouri, or Montana, which have slightly higher shell speeds, or if you're used to playing a ship with really fast rounds, this ship can be a touch frustrating to play when you first come back to it. Of course, poor Dunkirk here doesn't realize that, you know, 16-inch shells overmatch his bow. That is a problem that all Tier 6 ships have. Unfortunately, we lost our Alba there. That sucks, but we got to be careful because there's 2 destroyers in cap at B, so we definitely want to be maneuvering, but we also don't want to be opening up a broadside to this Amagi as he's turning in. And we need to cap B, but I'm also not going to solo into B like a dunce. One bounce on the Amagi there. He got angled just in time for that shell not to really do anything. You'll see I'm playing around with the telegraph, the speed of my ship. That's again to throw off the two destroyers that I'm assuming are still in B. In fact, it was a wise decision to do so because, as you can see, we have evaded their torpedoes. That Amagi is now broadside to me and is about to die to me. At least I'm hoping. Yes, Citadel hit and 11,000 damage. We've dodged a set of torpedoes, a set of 3 torpedoes. Hatsuharu? Maybe. What's the other one that's here? Well, we're going to push in just a little bit, and now we're going to turn out and about. And there's 2 very good reasons for that. One, you see that North Carolina coming around the corner. My thought was that he was going to go ahead and keep coming towards B, recognizing that I was there. But I noticed that his guns are pointed left. He is more interested in that Bayern and the other ship that's over there, the Tirpitz, and is ignoring me. We're going to turn away, and the reason is I have no cruiser support. Both the cruisers that were near me are way up north compared to me. Shot out on that North Carolina. And as a result, I don't have any support. Yeah, double Citadel for 37,466 damage. Hey, North Carolina, how's it going? Yep, just go ahead and continue to sail broadside to me. I won't punish you for this, I promise. Unfortunately, he does end up getting away. And that's because I underlead him, if I remember correctly. I either underlead him or he bounces a whole bunch of shells, and I don't do nearly as much damage as I thought I was going to do. Well, that doesn't look like it's underled. Well, I still took 12, almost 13k off, so I think what happened was he ducks around before I could get that final salvo off. Yep, that's exactly what it was. I also noticed now that the B is no longer the ship that was in B that was causing that anxiety there, for lack of a better phrase, is no longer there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn back around. Obviously, the North Carolina is the only real threat at this point aside from the 2 destroyers, and he is turning away from me. That shot misses entirely because he continued to turn, which I guess I should have anticipated. We'll go ahead and let the Tirpitz know that he's got bad news coming from behind. He's probably busy dealing with the 2 destroyers that went down there. And there's the Farragut, and then there is the Hatsuharu is all the way on the other side of the cap from the Tirpitz. So the Tirpitz has surrounded himself by a Hatsuharu, a North Carolina, and a Farragut. The last remaining ship that isn't those 2 is currently off over in the G area, G like 7-6 area, which I'm sure is about to be thoroughly discovered by the 2 cruisers that have finally decided to push into that area. Farragut here is attempting to duke it out with our Tirpitz. And unfortunately, our Tirpitz is flooding, and my shots on the Farragut miss. So the Tirpitz goes down. That leaves, I believe it's a Fiji, which is getting chased currently. Yep, Fiji by a York, and there goes the Fiji due to our Fuso, who did very well this match. He has, I believe he ends with 4 kills. And now it's just a matter of facing down the evil destroyers. Now, if you find yourself in a situation in which you are in a destroyer-heavy area, my recommendation is to remember that you have 4 directional keys. 2 to speed up or slow down, and 2 to move left or right. Abuse them. Don't sail in any form of straight line. Don't give them a very viable profile to shoot at. Understand that they will always see you before you see them. So definitely present a very narrow profile if you can. Okay, so Farragut here. He's within range. We're going to go ahead and lop off a chunk. 1 pen and 1 overpen for about 6k damage. And he definitely regrets that decision because now he's spotted. We definitely have to be careful of the Hatsuharu, whom none of us can see. There's the torpedoes from the frigate. We're going to go ahead and we're going to fire off a salvo here, and maybe we can snag that frigate before he disappears. Fuso grabs him. All right. I would have gotten him had the Fuso not gotten him. Fuso stole my kill. And, of course, Hatsuharu quickly disappears. So, this ship is a lot of fun to play. I do enjoy its play style a lot. You know, you have a good mix of aggressive and not aggressive. 150,436 damage, 4 Citadel hits, only 1 sink. 1,789 base XP, and, of course, the detailed report and credits and XP screen. Anyway, you know, these ships, like I said, the one thing to be cautious of is you do have that additional speed, so make sure that you're not overextending yourself. Make sure that you get yourself supported from your teammates by slowing down early and often. Anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you guys for watching.